Good afternoon, everyone. This is Moshe Frank with Frank News. Today we have the pleasure of having real estate entrepreneur Jake Elbogen. Jake, how are you today?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Under the circumstances, not bad, Baruch Hashem. So many people are wondering about real estate, residential, commercial. I want to cover as much as information as possible to help people. And since you have a lot of experience, you've been through peaks and valleys, you've been through it through your lifetime. So I thought let's get your insight and take on the matter. So let's start from the simple personal purchase, investment, whatever you want to call it, of a single family home in Brooklyn, New York, Jewish area. What do you think, if someone's wants to buy, is now a good time to do it? What do you think, Jake?
Right. So buying a house is not something a person does many times in his life. I've done it a few times. So I'm no expert in buying and selling houses, but in buying houses in economic times like these, there are important metrics to follow. There was a call I had from an investor's wife, and a Syrian friend of mine whose wife called me after 9/11, asking me what do I think about her son who wants to buy a condo near where the incident happened, near the World Trade Center. He wants to buy a condo there, and such a terrible place now, and the prices collapsed, and what should he do? It's maybe a miserable place to buy. I said, actually, I think he should buy himself one, and you can buy another 10 as well for an investment, because that area will recover and will go back. It was an incident that happened, and we recovered, and it actually was a great investment. On the other hand, this is not a similar situation where the world may change from this. The world did not change so much from 9/11, except for the airports and security. And here, we don't know how things will change. For example, I saw an article that people may not want to live in the congested cities. They may want to go into rural places which are seemingly safer. So that may change the landscape of home buying. Back to our Heimish discussion, we don't do that stuff. But again, nicht alles is Purim, nicht alles is Tisha B'Av. So person who's ready to buy a house, the interest rates are low now. Prices came down a little bit. But on the other hand, the economic marketplace changed where if a person buying a house now and his job security is not where it should be, and he buys a house, that's a concerning something to consider. So like I said, there are important metrics to follow, and the economy will affect people's jobs, and we don't know which way.
What are the important metrics?
Well, the important metrics are job security or business security, which there isn't any really. A person could have been doing fantastic owning property in Manhattan, and all of a sudden that's not so fantastic. Or he may have been a fantastic Amazon seller, and all of a sudden Amazon business changed. I'm not familiar with that region, that whole part of the marketplace, but things changed drastically in this marketplace. People who were in certain industries, nursing home industry is struggling. It's a tough place to be, even though they're still, making money. But it's just things are changing drastically, and we don't know how this will turn around. So back to your simple question: should I buy a house now? You have the security. There's no such thing as Hashem is the leader of our lives. But in general, people bought houses and things changed in life, and security has changed. But here, if you have a job or a business that you're secure with, in general, people shouldn't base their purchase on market timing. If you want to buy a house, if you're ready to buy a house in a neighborhood that you want to be in, the interest rates are low. Banks are giving a little bit of a harder time on funding. But in general, it's an okay time to buy. There are a lot of that's really it. So it's not a real solid answer you're hoping for. There's some things to do, but certainly, the world will, Mitzvah, come back to where it should be, And
From your past experience of
yep,
peaks and valleys in real estate, was there usually a timeline of how long things would take to turn around, or not really? There's no set
right.
time.
Right. So in every instance, I'm thinking back, let's say the crash of 87, the stock market crash. They crashed 2 days after it crashed. My position and many with me were buying whatever we can afford to buy, blue chips. And that bounced back. And that was the crash of 87. Crash of '08, or actually in 92, there was the banks were collapsing. Something was called the RTC, Resolution Trust. It was a disaster. Properties were being foreclosed and bought by banks. Banks couldn't afford to buy them. Government bailed them out through something called RTC. There's been many valleys. In every of those valleys, there were things to compare it to, and things bounced back. Met Hashem, things will bounce back, but this is a very unusual, extremely unusual long-term type of ramification. As it does change our lives, people all of a sudden, let's say in the office market, people are working from home. People will realize, you know what, it really does work from home. I've been working from home for weeks. So life's been changing. Our idea of office market, think about a typical shopping center. Person who owns a hair salon. Person with a hair salon closed the shop. She cannot pay her rent for the shopping center owner. She goes home to her apartment. She cannot afford to pay the rent there either because she's not getting income from her store. So you have two landlords right now who are not getting income, and those people who don't have, and those landlords may not be able to afford to pay the banks the mortgage. So eventually it gets foreclosed. Eventually there'll be a lot more property for sale. So it's not a short. This is not going to be a short trip. It's a interesting thing to watch, and fearful thing to watch. And so we're not ready. I wouldn't be ready to make strong decisions right now in any direction. Buying a house is a different matter.
So buying a house is personal use. The value up or down is not the
Right.
value up or down doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah, that's true. So it's nice if you save $50,000 in purchase and the interest rates are now very low. So you're actually saving real money, a few $100s a month. That's a significant amount of money for somebody if anybody, every month.
I'm assuming there's a certain anxiety and fear right now that people will be more flexible in dropping their prices on real estate. I'm assuming.
As a seller, right? So the sellers are coming about slowly. From what I'm reading, home sellers and commercial sellers, as well as buyers who have the money to buy right now, are also fearful. It's not just the seller who doesn't know what's going to be and wants to sell. The buyer is afraid what's going to be, and he may not want to buy. But those who have the ability and do want to save a few dollars and are saving on interest rates, it's a decent time to buy.
Gotcha. So let's say, because the unknown works better and for the worse. Let's say you're new. You always heard about real estate investing. It's a great opportunity and great this, great that. And you have $10 million sitting on the side. Would you tell people to go in it with the money now to try to buy something, or wait a little bit?
Well, definitely monitoring the markets. The markets are not settling down yet. I happen to be looking at some investments that are at a number and a return that I'm comfortable with, a tenancy in the place. I feel will not be affected as greatly by this economy. Retail is a tough place to be, and surprisingly, the safest place a month ago was residential. And residential is having a big shakedown now because of the inability to pay rents and the government allowing.
Now, in residential, aren't there sub-markets like low income Section 8 versus super high income versus middle? Would you say the middle is getting hit the most?
Well, super high are paying. The rents are lower than they were, but the affordability of paying the rents is still there. The Section 8 is getting paid. The middle class, like you mentioned, not sure where that middle class is, but it's not necessarily middle class but they're not on Section 8, and they're not paying. They're not paying, or they're being coaxed by local tenant, what do they call it, lawyer who suggests you don't have to pay, even if they can't pay. That's a tough place right now. And in general, there was rules that were changed a few months ago by the governor of New York that was also very, very disadvantaging for property owners, residential property owners, as you know.
So if you have $10 million today, Jake, where do you spend it right now?
Mattress. Spend it in the mattress right now. You spend the mattress and you watch it over. You lay on the mattress and you monitor the marketplace. There will be great opportunities, after a certain amount of.
So
you have to realize, tenants are still paying. You have a lot of retail tenants. Neiman Marcus announced they're going bankrupt. Good old luxury line of the department stores are one of the great department stores. They declared bankruptcy. JCPenney's different end of the town pole, but they're also struggling now in a great way. So there'll be a big shakedown. So I think that there should be time to monitor and watch instead of jumping into opportunities right now.
It's interesting that you always hear about these rated tenants, the tenants AAA and B and all these letters, which I'm not a real estate guy, but I never really saw it play out as much as playing out today. Like the banks and the grocery, the anchor tenants, quote unquote, whatever you call them, AAA, you see they're still paying. It's the other non-great rated tenants are not paying. So it's exactly, the ratings seem to express very accurately their status. Would you say that?
Right, but even the tenants that are decently rated are taking advantage and not paying. And the larger landlords of shopping centers are suing them. But the smaller landlords who don't have the muscle and money to sue Target or any of these big companies who such as there was a listing.
H&M, I heard, is not paying.
Yeah, so there are a lot of I had a list that I saw in the Wall Street Journal. But the point is that some people don't have the money to pay, and some companies just are taking advantage, and those companies will be sued by the landlords.
And when it comes to renewals, the landlords will remember this, correct?
When it comes to renewals, landlords are always very anxious for the tenant to renew, so there's always concessions.
There
was once a grocer who came to me that he wanted concessions. So I said, sure, absolutely. Let me see your sales. He didn't have to report his sales. So I said, I want to see your sales, so I should be able to feel confident to do all that money upgrades that you wanted, the tenant improvements. So he obliged, and he gave me his sales, and they were fantastic. So I said, nah, you're welcome to go if you want to. I'm not giving you any tenant improvement. And he stayed, and he upgraded it for himself. So, it's a cat and mouse game.
Because the retail isn't paying and hotels are vacant, could we assume that that's where the best deals are going to happen?
I didn't hear the question. Say it again.
Since the hotels are vacant, and they're probably vacant for quite a while, as well as the lower end retail, like salons, whatever it is, are not paying and probably take a while till things turn around, do you think that's where the best deals are going to happen in terms of buying?
Well, hotels are actually getting
refinancing.
Right, so hotels are getting help from the government right now. They're going to be shakedowns, but see, again, I don't know. We don't know what the psyche of a person will be. How fast are you going to a hotel right now? We had scheduled a vacation for August. I'm not interested in going on vacation in August. I'd rather just the biggest vacation I want is to go to my living room, or perhaps go to my bungalow. But to go to Italy right now, who cares to go to Italy right now? So the hotels, I don't know how long this will take. But right, they are getting some relief from our government. The European companies, I'm not sure what they're doing. Israel, is a disaster, so we feel for them. So your question about hotels and the opportunities, or the lower end retail stores. Lower end retail stores will be a big shakedown. Will the hair salon be able to afford to reopen? It's unclear right now. And we don't. It's not like for next week. We're talking about months from now. A lot of stores will not open.
What do you think about warehouses?
So warehousing is actually the stronger sector right now, I find. And the warehousing that we have, the only tenants who are asked not to pay was a kitchen guy and the gym. All the machine shops and whatnots, they're working. And it's an interesting phenomenon. That these companies are still functioning well. The gyms are doing well, and the gyms that I have in certain areas, they just can't afford to pay now because there's nobody's coming in, nobody's paying the monthly rents as well. But I think that to know which opportunity will be, I think that residential will be a strong opportunity because eventually things will turn around and people will start paying. There's a slight opportunity now to buy larger residential. But it's not yet. The best thing for that $10 million that you mentioned is to wait and see.
What do you think about office space? Do you think people say, "Oh, I work remotely, I don't need an office anymore"?
There was discussion as that all of a sudden we're realizing that we could do remote. Right now there's a space that we have that the tenant is saying we'd like to reduce it on renewal because we find that we can have remote meetings and with people coming in once a week to get their documents and meetings. But as far as having 30 desks, they're fine with 10 desks that are rotated between workers. So there may be a constriction in the office market.
Because I know especially the older business owners were never comfortable with remote workers. The whole idea was out of their head. It was like crazy. You're not in the office. We want to see, make sure you're being productive, performance.
Right.
For the first time, they're forced to be in these positions now, and they're seeing, hey, the performance level is better than we expected, or maybe as good.
Right. Well, yeah, and as well as going online for the marketing. They're used to having, if it would be a retail or manufacturing base, they're realizing that they have to convert to online marketing versus bricks and mortar.
I know B&H never allowed their employees to work remotely. The only ones they allowed were the programmers, because obviously they have the most leverage. They could leave in 5 seconds to any other company. But now customer service, everything is being done remotely. Right. And I'm wondering, since they're paying expensive Midtown Manhattan rates, if they'll consider keeping their customer service reps, especially who don't need to be anywhere, to keep them remote. I'm just.
I think this was a big eye opener. I think this virus, besides all the tragedies it's brought, has been a big eye opener to a lot of people in their perspective of business.
I think follow-up doctor appointments will be done over video, over the phone.
Absolutely. Telemedicine. So telemedicine is a big market. I've been talking this week to certain companies that are creating a telemedicine. Well, there are a lot of telemedicine companies right now, but there's a big growth in that area. Namely, I was speaking to an Israeli company this week on an investment where they specialize in face recognition, AI, for genetic testing. Till now, they've been doing it with actual doctor visits with machines. They've created a software for telemedicine to do facial recognition for genetic testing. Fascinating field and definitely a booming area.
I think the biggest shakeup in remote workers is going to be with older business owners who never felt comfortable with remote workers, and they finally were forced to experience it, and they're going to have to rethink their strategy. Yeah. That's what I feel.
Yeah. What about you with the art market? How are you experiencing it personally? You have an art gallery, but now all of a sudden you have to concentrate on online marketing, or I guess you're doing Zoom type of marketing with clients.
So we're always a multi-channel business. We have a physical gallery, we have an online presence, we have a social media presence, and we do home visits. So the only channel that's not being dealt with is the in-gallery walk-in, that type of business.
Which is how you create. This is how you found your clients, though, by walk-bys, walkthroughs.
Right, shows and walk-ins were a big part of a huge part. Now you're making me think of client acquisition. Correct.
Right.
So, but since we've been around for over 4 years, and my partner's been around for over 10 years, we do have a pretty good base. However, in terms of art, it's a luxury, it's not a necessity. Our sales are super down. and we're feeling it very strongly. However, like real estate, the bigger brands are less affected. The lesser brands are more affected. People feel more safe investing in brand name artists as opposed to, if I can quote my art friend Jake Elbogen, Schmilowitzes are definitely taking the biggest hit since
Right.
they're not, they're not AAA. They never were.
Well, speaking about it, you look at art as an investment as opposed to just a nice, decorative, enjoyable place to put a few dollars in. It's
I
not
think
money to trade.
I think it depends on the artist, but on the higher end, it's definitely an investment. In the upper 10% of the market is definitely an investment. You can make money if you're patient and you wait. But most of the art market is speculative and decorative. So,
Good line. Right. Right.
And you speculate doesn't mean you can't make money. You can make a lot of money. But
Right.
in terms of safe investment, and especially these times, people looking for that safe investment, I believe the upper 10% of the art market is very safe investment. Especially, artists aren't thinking.
Anecdotal. I want to tell you an anecdotal story about that. There was Sotheby's had an auction a few years ago of a Picasso. It ended up selling for a record at that time was $110 million for Picasso. It's been.
I can't hear you. I guess you're getting a call. Start the story again. I'm sorry, missed that.
I was saying I have 5% left my battery. I better plug it in. I was saying that there's actually a Jewish person, a couple in California. He was a local developer, made a few dollars. Back in the 50s, late 50s, he bought a house for $50,000, nice out in the hill, a nice mid-century modern house, and he bought himself a $50,000 Picasso, which was a lot of money because it was the price of a house, and it hung near his fireplace in his living room for 55 years. Passed away. His wife passed away. The estate sells his house. They got $1.7 million for the $50,000 house, and they got $110 million for the Picasso. So this speaks for itself as far as investments. But the Shmulevich could end up being the Picasso-vich, because Picasso was Picasso-vich at one point. He just became Picasso. Shmulevich or Yoshkevich could very well become a Picasso-vich.
Last thing, when it comes to refinancing in these times, who is in the best position to get the best deal? If you owe a lot of money to a property, I'm assuming you're in the best position to negotiate with the bank, right? They don't want you to give the keys back.
You're talking about on a retrade on an underlying mortgage. Yeah, well, there's going to be a lot of that.
Let's say I own a hotel worth $1 million, and I owe $990.
Can we put this on hold, because I got to get a battery pack for my phone. It's running at 3%. Okay, so I don't know how this works. Put it on hold. Could that be done? Okay, I'll be right back.
Back here. So Jake, scenario: I own a house. I just refinanced it. What do you call it? The underlying mortgage.
Refinanced it, yeah. Underlying mortgage.
And I own $1 million house. I just borrowed $990,000. Versus, if I own $1 million house, I only owe $10,000.
Right. So the chances of renegotiating the $10,000 is nil. Bank will be happy to take the property for $10,000, and you shouldn't be negotiating it. You should just pay it. But if somebody has $990,000 on $1.1 million house, perhaps it's not worth $1.1 million anymore. Maybe worth $890. So you're underwater, it's called. And at that point, the bank will negotiate with you. If it's worth a lot more than the underlying bank. Banks in 2008 were just renegotiating left and right until at a certain point they said, you know what, it's worth taking the house. And but we're not holding there. That's not really where the market is at all. It's not that troubled market that you speak of.
You're saying during 08, if someone owned a 990.
She's still trying to pay?
What do you say?
I'll do again. So in 08, if someone owed 990 and the property is now worth 800, the banks would settle for $500,000 or even less.
Depends on the skill of his lawyer. They were reducing mortgages, whatever it was called. There was a whole industry of that. I wasn't involved in that, but that's not the marketplace now. I know if you're thinking you have a friend who wants to do this, probably not the right time yet to do that.
Even for a hotel?
On commercial properties, we'll see. It's only 1 month since the disaster, so we don't know yet how drastic this will be. For the markets will come roaring back, and there will not be any. And there are negotiations now that I know of on major properties that are struggling. But,
There are.
yeah, but just we're talking about a couple of weeks. How long is this? About 4 weeks since this whole thing took a nosedive. But call me in a month or two and we'll revisit this issue.
So if it keeps on going down, people could be in the position to do great renegotiations with their bank.
Yeah, I mean, also the government is helping a lot. I mean, the banks were getting a lot of money. I don't know if you saw the papers that not banks, the hotel owners have been getting a lot of help from the government. So let's see. Let's read a week's worth of additional data, and we'll get back to each other.
One last thing: when people don't pay rent or don't pay mortgage, do they owe their landlords the money? And when they owe the banks the mortgage payment, do they have to pay a balloon payment once things go back to normal, or they add it to the end of the loan?
Right. So the way it was suggested was that if somebody has a mortgage, the bank will say, "Don't pay for me for a month or two. We'll do it at the tail end." The president spoke about that, where if it expires, say, October of 2021, you extend it by 2 months the payments, as well as and what you mentioned about rents. I did negotiate with one of my tenants that he has $8,000 a month rent and he can't pay it. So I said, well, when things come back, you will you pay me $1,000 extra a month until it's fully paid up. And he agreed to it. So I think the deals
And
are
the
being
banks,
cut.
what do you say? They add it to the end?
Banks were, the way I read was that the banks will add it towards the, suppose it's called when a mortgage balloons or mortgage comes to, the date of, let's say it was a 10-year mortgage, 10 years has come and gone, they give it 2-3 months extra to pay off the balance. So it's not called, it doesn't go against your credit. It's a solution that came up. I'm not sure how it's being implemented.
So they're not going to make you after 3 months pay 3 months rent right away. They'll
Right.
add it to the end or spread it over
Right.
some time.
So, right, which is somebody who has a 20-year mortgage. It's 20 years from now, what's $1,000 a month? Right now, $1,000 a month may be hard for somebody, but 20 years from now, $1,000 with inflation won't be the same $1,000.
So in summary, if I may say, Jake, your professional opinion is it's too early to say or predict anything, but there are deals in different sectors.
The data is coming in. It's like on the virus, things keep changing every day as well. And there's a lot of scientists and a lot of really great minds studying it. And the same is going for the financial world. The financial world every day, I'm reading additional changing data, strengths and weaknesses both ways. On the retail end, the industrial and office markets, so it's hard to tell yet. The conversation we're having is very early in the process.
But I would say you said non-luxury warehousing today seems to be the safest spot to put your money.
As well as luxury, it's upscale tenants, distributors, manufacturers, particularly manufacturers in the fields that are needed today are doing fantastic. And
that's why I say non-luxury. So I guess you said
right.
So would be different.
A luxury would mean like luxury bags and silliness like that.
Or tiles.
Right, construction items. Right, so those are issues that are definitely took a slow screeching halt. So construction took a screeching halt. So yeah, depending which sector you're in, but in general, I find the industrial market is held up pretty well.
It seems like industrial in general is very much a needed thing. So it's not like, the retail went up, the retail went down. When it comes to industrial, you can really have industrial middle of Montana with a normal chain supply of shipping and you're fine. You don't need to be anywhere. So the markets there seem to be a lot more stable.
Right. In the industrial market is interesting. I remember when industrial buildings in Brooklyn were bombed out empty. Because manufacturing was leaving. It went overseas. industry city or other large industrial complexes that were sitting empty, and they were struggling. And then they started converting them into, repurposing them into residential. Like Jersey City, for example, a lot of industrial buildings. We bought a large industrial property in Passaic County recently, and empty, and we were thinking of converting it into residential, an opportunity zone. And a tenant from Pasco came to us. He occupied 250,000 square feet in Jersey City. He was kicked out of that building upon renewal. They did not want to renew his option, his lease, and because they're doing residential. So we were the recipients of that. That was good luck for us. We leased up the whole 250,000 square feet with a single tenant who was kicked out of Jersey City. Came into our building. So our plans changed from a long term of conversion into residential, just taking this 10-year tenant and having a great cash flow. The marketplace, the real estate marketplace, is very much alive, and it's a living creature. Things change and move around, and you have to move.
Jake, are you going to move back to your office? Or you're going to stay at home?
I haven't been out of my office, out of my house for a couple of weeks. It's pretty good, But it's important to eventually. It's important to meet with people, human beings, after a while.
I guess men still need their man caves, so they're going to need office.
Office is not a bad cake, but you do need employees. You need secretary. You have to have some place if you have, physical place to work. You'll need your physical place for your retail space, where you call me at any given opportunity. That painting behind me, if you have any buyers, let me know.
Thank you so much, Elbogen. Thanks so much, Jake, for your time and your expertise.
Have a good Shabbos. We're going to the mikveh. What's going to be with the mikveh today? Good Shabbos Kodesh.
Off camera.
Have a good Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos. Thanks for your time.